Are black people too materialistic? That's what we're gonna kind of dive in today on this episode, right? So stay tuned. Have you ever wondered what's the difference of working on your business versus in your business?
How some banks and people were instrumental in the development and the founding of our banking system.
Now, on today's episode of Tax Tip, we getting down and dirty.
I want to start a business. I want financial freedom.
Do you have a business and you have children to employ?
Women should do this and men should do that.
Do you know the benefits of an S corporation? We're going to talk to you about the mistakes you need to avoid before starting your LLC. What's going on, y'all? It's another episode of Minding Your Biz. I'm Dr. Blackwealth, one of your co-hosts, and we got...
It's your girl, Miss Fab Financial.
What's up, what's up? So we talking about it. Are black people too materialistic?
Are we too materialistic? We black too now. Now, I like to consume. I buy a little something now. Like
I know I'm not too materialistic.
And I've had to come out of that. I definitely had to walk away from that. Because I definitely was a consumer, and I was into stuff, right? And so, but
we're trying to solve,
the problem here.
The problem, is basically like, how can we as a people, right? We as black people win today in America, in the world? Is being too materialistic stopping us? We not into economics, we not into politics. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think that's a very good question.
And winning can be very like your own definition to it. But from my perspective, like at least having your basic needs met and a little bit of your desires and wants kind of met, right?
Right.
And so that's financial gain at minimum or at best. Right. And then all the other stuff.
I think the state of Black America, right? How can we win? Are we too materialistic to win? Right. And so when I think about that, it's like, hey, do we consume too much to win? And I think we do. I think we buy and consume more than we produce, more than we transfer wealth, more than we participate in the economy. Right. I think we need to really put a lot of that stuff down, right? The black dollar is strong. We've already established that. We are a force to be reckoned with, right? We can translate and build any company into a powerhouse that's not owned by us. Mm-hmm. We have that power.
We got culture.
We have cultures. Our black dollars are concentrated into certain areas, but we need to redirect it. Right. And so when we think about the economy as Black Americans, I think a heavier play is, of course, for me, it's politics. Right. I think we are low on the totem pole for everything. And I think COVID really showed us that. Right. Who was on the front line? Where the low salary jobs were. Right. Which is essential workers. Right. That's retail. That's food. Right. All of those low paying wage jobs, we dominated in those areas. But is that an area we need to be dominating in? We don't have a savings. If we can't work, we can't pay our bills. Mm-hmm. And so those service industry jobs will be leaving. Right. It'll be replaced with robots, automation, cashier, food, all those people. You had to go and work. Mm-hmm. And we already know that our health, we don't get the best health care. We don't have the best doctors. We don't have the best this, the best that. So when you putting yourself on the front line because you have no choice, then you kind of open yourself up, right? For, unfortunately, during COVID, we were the ones that bared the biggest brunt. We died at higher rates because we had a lot of underlying factors, but because we were on the front line. Because of the job, disproportionately, that's where we are heavy, right? Nurses, workers, teachers, We're heavy in those middle to low paying jobs. And I think when we talk about winning as a Black community, we have to diverse. We have to grow, move up the ladder as managers, as lawyers, as FinTech companies, as manufacturers. We got to kind of move ourselves up the ladder so we're not putting ourselves in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And I think that how do we do that? Right? I feel like it's politics.
I'm sorry. Well, I don't know. So I do know. Politics, y'all, you know.
I know you like, I already know what you're going to say.
Me.
I can say it for you.
You know, y'all know me. I think the thing you got to really look at, though, because like one thing you mentioned as I was doing research for this episode, you mentioned COVID. So when we come down to, are Black people too materialistic? Are we not really into politics? Are we not wealth building? I think that there is a strong narrative that's pushed through media and propaganda and those who control that side of the world to make most of us believe that Black people are not winning, that Black people are the most consumers, because everybody consume, and we might be the most consumers because we don't produce a whole lot. I
mean, that's what makes it upside down, because we consume more than we produce. For
sure. And that could be argued as well. However, that's the narrative that's pushed, though. I think that my thing is like we have to be careful of what's thrown in our face to like be quick to believe it off bat. So like when I pulled up the numbers, there was a lot of, for our community, Black people, COVID was a blessing because it was a lot of Black people who started businesses during COVID. There was a lot of Black people who was making over started to make 6 to 7 figures during COVID. There was a lot of Black people who their companies scaled, meaning they hired more than just themselves or 1 or 2 other people. As far as being materialistic, though, I have to think about it like you got to really kind of get deep on that, because you got a period in America where Black people were producers by necessity because we had to like produce our own stuff.
Right.
And so for me, I would question a lot of this stuff is like self-accountability, being honest, because you got to start questioning like where you are in close proximity to where your parents or your grandparents or whoever had influence over you and what they did. Because 9 times out of 10, you follow in that suit. So think about when most people push heavy school, like go to school, get a job, right? But we coming out of a period where it was probably it was difficult for people to sustain businesses or entrepreneurship look hard. You know what I mean?
Right. And I get what you're saying, but I think overall, right, whether we want to be business owners, whether we want to go to college, right, a lot of that has to do with policy. How right now, right, the government pushes policies to push the society into a particular direction, right? When you think about even the civil rights movement, we had to push policy to change to allow the expansion of us in different spaces. And the same thing happens, we're talking about where we consume, right? And so when we look at, let's just take social media, because that's a hot topic, right? There are very few Black FinTech companies. I know for one, there's Fanbase. And so it's like, well, why aren't we helping flooding that space?
Is Fanbase the one owned by what you call his son?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isaac Hayes, I think it is. Yeah. And so when you think about stuff like that, it goes, okay, well, where is the capital to help him push for market share? Right. And
he raising it.
For sure. So us as a community, why aren't we galvanizing behind him?
For sure.
Why aren't there more policies pushed to help Black FinTech companies or to help Black producers? So sometimes it is politics in that. You have to play both sides of the field, because even as you make strides in all of these departments, At the end of the day, it's access to money, it's access to getting rooms to build relationships. If the people at the top don't look like us, it's really difficult for us to get in those rooms. And so as we keep trying to pull up 1 and 2 at a time, the policies, like we talk about diversity and inclusion. Well, why is that even existing? Because we have to be included. We have to force people to include us. That's not natural, right? So I don't care how much money we try to make. I don't care how many CEOs we think we have. You have to force people to include us in, right? As well. So we still have to do our part, right? We still have to support each other. We still have to, build the Black business. But it's going to be harder for me to build the business if I can't even get capital. If I'm not even allowed in the spaces to hire 6-figure CEOs to help pull up my community. So I think it is politics for me. We gotta play the game. We can't. Because you could look at us right now, like you said, COVID produced how many more millionaires?
I don't know the exact number.
How many more employees? I think it was like for every successful Black business, they hire one additional employee. At what? Maybe $30,000? But if we can make, they were talking about the racial equality gap that, hey, most Black Americans make $10,000 less than their white counterparts. By just forcing that, it was something like you would pull almost 1.2 million Black Americans into the middle class. Well, that helps us with the economy. That helps us as a Black community. All of us don't have to be business owners. But, right, when we talk about economics, we're talking about the transfer of wealth, we're talking about consumption, and we're talking about, producing. And if we pull up a lot of people into this middle class, yes, you will have more consumers, but you can have more business owners. It's like a domino effect. And to me, it's politics.
I don't know what policy so let me address this first. So
no podcast.
In 2021, right, there was like Black-owned employer businesses increased by 14.3%, right? Roughly 20,000 businesses, total 161,000 employer businesses. That's 2021. So like,
and generating how much money? If we have that number.
If we got that number, that's a good question. I think these are in the million because now you got Black-owned percentage of employers, 2.7%. Average payroll per business is 333. This has got to be million.
Because I even look at us as a Black business, right? Mm-hmm. At the height when we were hiring people, we paid an average salary of maybe $30,000, right? We did not employ managers or anyone who made 6 figures. And right, that's where a lot of our Black businesses stop.
Right, but see, so stuff like that could be fixed. It won't be fixed through policy though. That's through education.
It is fixed through policy.
In what way?
Because sometimes it's allowing us to gain capital as education and as relationships. How can I grow my company, right, large enough that I can then hire managers and to pay them 6 figures? What does that look like?
So that looks like,
and that's market share. That's market share. So we could look at fan base right now. That's market share. And sometimes that's also capital. Right. How do you increase your market share? It's through capital. Right.
But he's asking, so on capital, right? Most of these people who are successful building their businesses through capital, they're raising capital. This is not like going to Chase.
It's definitely not going to Chase. So then how do you...
raising capital. Like, right, hey, Dave, I got a business. Here's my idea. Can you invest?
And venture capitalists, most of them don't invest in Black business unless you force them to diversify and include. And that's through policy. That's saying, hey, if you have a fund, you need to make sure that you include a certain amount of Black businesses because you're excluding this demographic of people. So if I have a venture capitalist company and I want to invest... right? And I say, you know what? But that damn government, they making me, I can't get the tax benefits or I can't do X, Y, and Z unless I include a minority business. Well, let me look at this minority business. Okay, well, now let me look at Fanbase. Okay, what? And I can invest in that business then what?
The problem with that, though, is... the problem with politics overall for me...
The same thing with... I'm sorry, one more thing. The same thing... The same thing with... go ahead, I didn't draw. I forgot the name of the policy.
Look, see what I'm saying? Policy slipping. It's going to come back.
It's definitely going to come back. Affirmative action.
Okay, what about affirmative action?
That's policy. We had to force schools, jobs to include us, even though we're more than capable. We got to work what? What's the saying? 3 times as hard. We got to jump twice as high. But if you don't force people to include us, we're still going to be standing outside waiting. No matter how smart, no matter how athletic, no matter how fast, we will not be included unless we force people to include us in it.
No, it makes sense. So you cannot deny what policy have somewhat helped and affected us as a people. However, the problem with policy is we rely too much on government and less on ourselves. And at the end of the day, you have affirmative actions that says, hey, you need to force us in your schools because of how we're teaching our kids second-handedly is not cutting it. And then what happens with the latter? What happens is now you get to go to public schools, and now that's controlled by government. So you're limited on what your kids are still being taught. And then what happens with people with money? They go build their own schools.
For sure. So, but how do you even get there? That's a start, right?
Sure.
Because there's always outliers. There's always going to be exceptions.
So
but with affirmative action is to say that Princeton, Yale, Ivy League schools, certain jobs, certain industries, the NFL, all of it. They got the Rooney Rule. You got to interview people, right? They wasn't even interviewing. Y'all not even interviewing us. So you have to force people to look outside of what may be uncomfortable, what may be, because sometimes it's not always a racial bias. We hire who we know, right? That's why most black CEOs hire other black people, because we hire who we know. We are just not in those positions of power.
And that's the problem that we have with Black Americans. We got to get in those positions of power, but personally, I don't think it's going to come through. I think politics has its place after a certain position that you put yourself in. So once we reach a certain height, policy might be able to help us further or advance us, right? Like when y'all look at this, I pulled up this article. This was just written out March 2024. Black Americans' significant economic and civil rights progress threatens is basically what the report is. Basically, the gist of the report is the social, economic, and political advances in the last 60 years since the civil rights legislations, right? There's unsatisfactory across all those platforms. Black people still have challenges with getting into Congress and politics itself. We still not getting we're not getting paid. Right? This is government. This is job. This is the same thing we talked about before. Higher wage jobs.
We are bottom neck at the bottom.
Right. But we have to be more producers to do that. I don't think that policy is going to
I think it plays hand in hand. If you put people in, if the policy makers look like you, right? Then they can make the policy. Yes, we do. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear about we don't have enough money. We just said we consume. We'll pull up the black dollar. It just doesn't go in the right direction.
But that's what I'm saying. You're still missing my point. The point is that's a business. Any group of people, organizations that's lobbying to Congress has an organization that lobbies them and takes in funds
and that's
and money.
At the top layer. That is
only thing you can say we got is the NAACP.
Child bye. We ain't talking about no NAACP.
I'm just saying.
Okay, we can move on from them. I ain't got no smoke. I got smoke, but not today.
I'm just saying that's what you got. But when you think about
why is that? Why is that?
Because we don't have businesses.
Because let's take the civil rights movement.
Or we don't have a common cause.
We are not
that we
in it
behind.
Anymore. We're not in it. We don't care anymore. We don't care.
For sure.
We don't care anymore. We think that the money is just enough. If I work myself to the bone and make the money, that's more than enough. And it's not. You have to, okay, that's, again, the civil rights movement. When the boycott in Selma, Alabama, right, was not just about inclusion. It wasn't just, hey, we don't need to, sit on the back of the bus. It was also about showing the force and the power we have as a community. And it wasn't just one part of the community. It was all of us. It was money and politics, right, that forced the boycott, that forced them to change. It was the money and the politics. The poor people who decided to sacrifice and go, okay, I'm not going to ride the bus. So then what's the solution? Well, there were black people with money who had cars who helped them. There was also white people who had money. It was a collective. They say, hey, we're going to come together as a community and force the Montgomery bus system to allow us to sit wherever we want on this bus. And it didn't happen in 3 months. It didn't happen in 60 and 90 days. It happened at almost took them a year for change to even happen. I just think we don't care anymore. And I think we make it just about the money. Because as we're talking about the money, right, the goalpost keeps moving. The goalpost keeps moving. You care about public education, then you can vote for the superintendent who does what? Or is in charge of how schools are being taught. I think you have to participate in both. And now I'm talking about every level. There are poor white folks who give $10 a month to Donald Trump and his campaign. There are policymakers can make your life better, depending on who you put in place. Now, are they the end all be all? No. They're not Jesus. They're not the savior. They're a part of the solution. They're a part of it. I think as Black Americans in the Black community, if we want to go further, we have to stop consuming. We have to stop consuming from people who don't necessarily look like us all the time. Again, I bring up fan base. That man is out here trying to raise money. It's enough of us right now. If we left Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and galvanized behind him and other Black social media companies that could really push and make a difference for him.
I'm gonna say this.
All right. I'm
gonna say this.
That's all right.
There are a group of people who will push toward politics, and you have every right to. But what I do know is over the past 60 years, I don't care what legislation you pull up.
Wait, one more thing about politics. One more thing about politics. Wait a minute. One more thing about politics.
Got the bill, y'all.
The city of Atlanta is a prime example of policies and policymakers who look like you, where Black Americans thrive here. Unlike any other city that I can go back home, the people don't look like me. They have different hospitality. I remember that I'm Black when I go back home. I'm like, dang, I'm back home. I don't get the same respect, love, and support. When I come here, there's a Black mayor. My mother worked for CDC. Her chief was Black. It was a Black woman doing her thing. There's more people in positions of power here in Atlanta than most major cities. Why is that? Civil rights and policy makers that look like us. When you think about the airport and the money that comes through there and the people who get the contracts look like us. So we represent and help us. When I go to any other major city that's predominantly Black, they struggle. They got a problem. It's a problem. Mississippi, Alabama, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, New York, they don't live and thrive the way we do. They don't network the way we do. It's a thing here because the people who run this city look like us. When I go back home, there may be the Black mayor, but the city council, the commissioner, the sheriff, the chief, everybody don't look like me. All the businesses, the majority, you could look across the city. It's something here in Atlanta. Why? Because our people look like us in most of the positions of power. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not scandal and there's not people putting money in their back pocket, right? Because there's no perfect system. Mm-hmm. But it's the reason why people come here, including yourself and me. It's a reason why. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because, we did the hard work. But when you have policies around you that make it easier, that's not on your neck to open up a business in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not. It's difficult. And so we take advantage. And why is that? It's policy. When they lay off the ropes, when they talk about deregulation, that's policy. That's allowing capitalism to do what it needs to do, regardless of color. That's policy, man. That's politics. Y'all get out there and vote. We just voted.
Okay.
All right, I'm done. Go ahead.
So watch this, right? So here we go. I'm gonna just lay it out. Some of y'all might like it, may not like it, but I'm just gonna have to attack you. It's accountability. So when we build businesses, this is what it allow us to do. Businesses allow us to build a economic structure for our own family. We turn around and we hire people so we can employ them, which turns around and we pay them money, right? That's what that means. So that other people can do what? Live their lives, because everybody won't be a business owner, right? We can, but it boils down to what you mentioned about people not caring. A lot of people, other communities work because at the center of them, they are a community. They wrap around each other. They build each other. They support each other. Nobody runs to policy except for the people who are reliant on the government to do something.
You're taking it out of context. Absolutely not. And so when I say us as a community, if I don't want to be a business owner necessarily, but I'm a civil servant, I want to help my people, then I may run for office to be a person in the room that represents my community and my people. Now, my people then have to support me, right? Just because we talk about politics, then guess what? If I'm also in the room and I say, hey, listen, as the HUD department manager, whatever that is for HUD, or social services or whatever else that is that helps my people and my community, I can then be a representation in the room that helps people transition out of welfare, right? But people need help. So how do we do that? How do we transition from not being generational welfare users and abusers?
Business. You got to build business.
Right. So then how do I do that without policy? How do I do that? How do I do that?
How do you build a business?
How do I transition people from being dependent on social services? Just start a business?
Right.
Oh, okay.
If you're dependent on social services, what does that mean? Now you got to break this stuff down. If you're dependent on social services, right? Because I was on that, we was on that. So this ain't coming from theory. This is coming from, we used to be on food stamps. Food stamps has a minimum required income or maximum required income for you not to qualify.
Okay, and who sets that? Who sets those? Policymakers. So if I'm a policymaker, then I can say, how do I transition my people from not being dependent generation after generation? Then I'm going to say, okay, so before we used to exclude families. Well, let's include families to help them, right? Let's say if you're on welfare, it could be you and your husband. And we're going to give you a certain amount of assistance for 6 months or 12 months. Policymakers, we make the rules. Somebody made the rules. It just didn't come from the sky.
For sure.
Right? So we can set it up to be whatever we want it to be.
Right. So if we on public assistance, that suggests that we're not making a certain amount of income to be able to afford food for our family. Mm-hmm. That means that you need to get a better job.
Right.
Find a skill to make money. If I own a business and I start to employ people at a rate that allows them to take care of their needs and satisfies their wants, that removes you from public assistance. Do it not, it removes you from public assistance. There's no policy involved in that. All I did was build a business and hire people. The thing about other communities are, like I just said, they rally behind their community and they understand what that is. I'm not saying that we don't, but we have for sure lost that. There used to be a point in time where from my grandma and maybe let's call it somebody else's great grandmother owned a home, because that was the number one thing. We left from south to north. People owned homes. They bought their houses, right? And guess what? Most people sold them, didn't use it, was thrown out of there, right? That we're not passing down the generational wealth by any means because we're not being conscious of the fact of us being producers. There's no policies for that. There's no policies that made Henry Ford other than him being saved after he built money
and being a white male.
Exactly. So my point is, so this falls on, the accountability falls on us as a business owner. If we're making money, I'm for sure not the first person to tell anybody what to do with their money. However, you cannot be in a fight for black people without helping them. So if we have a business, if we made money, if we sold a business, why are we not starting venture capitalist companies that can help produce an idea to make millions of dollars? We got the capital to do it.
I agree with all of that. I agree with all of that.
That's all business.
And it is business.
That's leaving the government out. I don't care what. I don't care.
Do it without the government.
But people have been doing it for
give me some examples today. We need the government. We work hand in hand together. We just talked about
Robert Smith has a Vista. What's his company called?
He's one of how many? There are outliers, but we're talking about how we as a community, as the majority, as a collective, right, can get out of the lower paying wage jobs. We're underrepresented in high income producing jobs, right? We're talking about if the majority of us or a lot of us were not on the front line. So we talked about COVID, which are lower wage paying jobs. Mm-hmm. How do we get our people out of that? And that is business, right?
It is.
Right, but then we can't okay, so when you think about Johnson & Johnson, when you think about home health care companies, when you think about Emory, when you think about any type of company, a beverage company, a water company, these major companies get fuel and energy and allow them to get market share via capital. So there are water companies, there are beverage companies, there are clothing companies that we own, but we are not a part of the market share, right? We're not in the space that we can then employ the majority or a good amount of our people in 6 and 7 figure high CEO, CFO jobs or middle management jobs, district management jobs. We're not there because we don't make the capital to support that type of salary. And why? Why is that?
I kind of disagree with that. I know that
I'm talking about national brands. What national brand black companies? Now we got some unsung heroes, right? We talk about This Is It.
Yeah, but you're
right.
Okay. So I mean,
but think about This Is It.
A national brand.
Think about This Is It. How many 6-figure?
I don't know what that is.
This Is It. The brothers in Atlanta that sell the soul food that's been around for years.
Yeah,
they got them a lot of places all over Georgia. Uh-huh. How many managers do you think they employ that make 6 and 7 figures?
Oh, I don't know.
As a national food, they're not national. As a local food restaurant company.
Like they got a headquarters?
For sure. Very few. Almost none. It's low wage. But you think about a Longhorn. I bet you they got some 6 and 7 figure salaries they paying.
For sure.
Right.
But
we can't grow. We can't get there because of capital. Longhorn started off as one. They didn't start off as like a major juggernaut for steak.
So I mean, policies policies is one thing and getting capital is another thing.
Well, it's connected. I can't get...
You telling me the government is going to force the banks to give you money?
Absolutely. Through grants, through incentives. It's all taxation. We talk about empowerment zones. We talk about all the tax credits. That's
those
why
are credits. We talking capital. You asking for money.
They getting tax incentives for it. That's called diversity and inclusion.
We talking about getting
capital, venture
income,
capitalism.
for sure.
Absolutely. And that's via grants or venture capitalism.
But they out here though. You could get a grant right now.
All right. He make it seem so easy.
I
wonder why it's not more. Why do we have more? Why don't we have more black businesses that get out of the mom and pop stage and can be national brands?
A lot of that is the business owner itself. You putting a lot
and
of that.
And the business owner lacks education. Right? Why?
Because we're not teaching them.
Why? We don't have access to it.
To access to what?
Okay, no problem.
Access to what? Let's break it down. Access to what? We got time today. What we don't have access to for businesses not to grow beyond mom and pop. I've met business owners.
Then why don't we grow beyond mom and pop?
Ask the question. But most of that stuff is self-inflicted. Most people don't want to have the responsibility of hiring other people. Most people don't want to grow past a certain point. I think once you get
to a certain level of business, I disagree. Now, we're talking about people. I'll give you the same example. I said, this is it. Apparently, they want to hire people. They have stores in Camp Creek. They got them in Lithonia. They got them all over, right? Mm-hmm. Also, what's the lady that does the food? The Pinky Cole, right? Mm-hmm. For slutty vegan, right? Mm-hmm. How can she become a national brand?
But she's doing that. You don't think she got middle management that's making money?
That's making 6 and 7 figures?
Right.
I don't know.
I bet you she do.
Okay,
but
so
that's on. But see, check the difference on that. You talking the young lady built a business that took off. I don't know from watching interviews I've seen her on if her intentions were to be as big as she is now, but her business model is good. The demand for it was there and it forced a growth. I'm pretty sure she has now made it to the point. I know for a fact she got at least corporate office that's strategically building out her stores. One of the reasons why I think I know that is because I know she mentioned that any place she goes, she owns the real estate. That's being strategic in her growth.
That's sure, but what does her C-suite look like? What does her management look like? Does she have district managers, regional managers, and not? I'm saying a lot of our black businesses don't get there, and it's the reason why.
Yeah, but
we are limited that we cannot become national brands and sustain over time. It's the reason why. Okay, let's say a Checkers, because that's what I would compare her to. She's a healthy Checkers. She's got stores set up. Checkers is a national brand that has a 6 and 7 figure C-suite all the way down to regional and district managers who also make 6 figures. But that's what we're trying to push our people up in our businesses, that we're not just local and that we're paying a couple hundred people 20 and 30 grand.
But most national brands are public companies. Now, I don't know.
But how do they get there? It's growth and investment, right?
For sure.
So, for example, Pinky to become a national brand, for her to then set up shop around places in the U.S., right? It's capital. It's people that are going to invest in her company for growth. How does she get access to that capital? It's relationship building for her, right? But she's also made herself almost like a celebrity in a sense.
But we don't have
she is like the white horse. It's like, oh my God, it's a black woman that's in vegan. Oh my God, and her stuff is really good. She's pushing herself almost as a celebrity in that, right? Where unlike our white counterparts, they don't have to have a personal brand to help push the company, right? We just found out maybe who the owner of Amazon, Netflix, Longhorn, all these different companies. We have to tie it to galvanize the support for capital. And our white counterparts don't have to do that.
That boils down to people being able to invest. Because all those white counterparts that we looking at, they don't just run to banks. They looking at venture capitalists. But then you got to look at how do
I get to the venture capitalists?
That's what I'm saying.
That's white that don't want to think, don't want to talk to me.
Right, but what I'm saying is there's somebody black that's building an investment company that you can probably ask for money. You could probably ask somebody white. But the question is, we always on the other side of the question of how do we get into something somebody built or something we desire to want. The real question is how do we build this? Them venture capitalist companies, it's not a secret to it. They are heavy invested in stocks, options, and big investments that allow them to invest in other businesses. So the real question boils down to how many black venture capitalist companies can we build? That's stuff we can do on our own using what they already have, which is the stock market. That's how most of them do it. Look at Ray Dalio. Any company that invests, you can point out their portfolio. They are heavily invested.
A lot. That's true. That's on the flip side of the coin. But if I'm a black business,
that sounds
right,
like an excuse.
It's definitely not an excuse, because at the end of the day, a lot of our black companies are not ready to be invested in. Right.
But that comes down to
why
development.
is that? Why is that? Why?
They're not seeking the development. You can't tell me you can't get access to the stuff out here. You cannot tell me at this day and age that you can't find somebody to help you run your business. Black, white, I don't care what the color is. You can't say you can't find them. You're not looking for them. You don't want it.
Okay.
You don't want to grow your business beyond the position that it's in.
I disagree.
You don't want to hire the people.
I think there are business owners out here that are in position that their businesses could be invested into with a few changes and adjustments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on if capital, right? Bringing in a C-suite, bringing in some people that change their business around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putting some systems in place that will help their business look more lucrative to investors.
Mm-hmm.
I feel in my heart that there are some black businesses out there in that position. There's not a lot of us, but I feel that there are out there, right? And so the question is us as a black community, as a collective, as a whole, how do we position ourselves to be invest worthy, right? How do we push our businesses,
find a mentor,
right? In those fields to make our businesses worthy, right? That's a question. But then we also have to look at the other side of it. As worthy as our businesses are, right? How do we then gain the capital to push our business to the next level? And what I'm saying is that policies and politics play a role in helping our businesses and our economy as a black community grow. It's all things must work at the same time. I don't think that it's just about the money. I don't think it's just about we have to grow and start a business. Because if that's the case, we all would have multi-million-dollar businesses just based on some of our own effort. We could all have multi-million-dollar businesses. But it's the reason why some of our businesses are stagnant, are capped, and hit their own glass ceiling. And I think policy and politics play a part.
Cool. Businesses is built on community. Businesses is built on you having the ability to really grow a business. I think that you can find, just like policies, Martin Luther King couldn't make in a hedgeway without having white allies. Just couldn't do it. And so with that being said, there are people, regardless of color, who are helping people build businesses, who are helping you grow your business. The real question you got to ask yourself is, this is what you want. Outside of that, as a community, we got to rally around our community, right? We have to rally around our community. People start businesses. When you think about from Jeff Bezos all the way up to the Zuckerbergs, When they first started off their businesses inside their garage, they asked their local friends, families, and people for money to help start their business before they went out to big venture capitalists or any bank or anybody else, which means that the families was in a position to have income. A lot of our problems is wrapped around the fact that we don't have enough money. And what I'm saying is there's not enough businesses that can produce enough jobs for when our kids go to college that they can walk off and be hired into a position on our board, on our staff to help them make more money. And out of all these years of policies, there's no policy that's going to force community for us to shop with our own. There's no policy that's going to force and do that. We're still trying to be accepted. That's why we still go to policies. We're still trying to be included into businesses that don't want you when we can build our own. It's being proven right now over the past few years, right? And so the more businesses we have, the more investors we can have, the more job creations we can create, the more wealthy and middle-class families we can produce.
All right. So, did we answer the question for y'all? Us as the Black community, do we consume too much to win? I say yes, we do consume too much. I feel like you might say we do, but maybe not in the right place.
Right. I don't think we consume too much. I think it's propaganda. I think it's just like how they show you like, hey, Africa's this, that, and the third, but when you go over there, you don't see all the stuff you see on TV. So it's pushed. Right? You got the ability to change it. Y'all should change it. We should change it. We should do it together.
All right. So we agree, and I think to disagree. Us in the Black community, do we consume too much to win? Us as the Black community, is it economics? Is it politics? Well, hopefully through this discussion, you have come to your own conclusion. What do you think? How do you think we can win as a Black community?
For sure. Let us know. We'll see y'all on the next episode.
You forgot to tell them to like, subscribe, and share. Subscribe, and share, y'all. And don't forget to keep minding your biz.
That's right. We'll see you when we see you.